Business district. We know that it sits politically within the confines of the village of Putnam. The question is it Crestwood? And if so, what is Crestwood? It's not, Crestwood is not a political entity. It's a neighborhood. It's an idea, I think. There are some purists who would say that it's strictly bounded by the plot of the original Yonkers Park development. Yeah, maybe. If that were the case, anything to the west of Scarsdale Road, St. Vladimir's, the old firehouse, wouldn't be part of it. That plot did not extend up to St. Eleanor's Lane, so Schultz Field, Annunciation wouldn't be part of Crestwood. Where I live, which was developed as Monrovia Park at one time, wouldn't be part of Crestwood. Asbury Church, the Crestwood Boy Scout Cabin, Girl Scout Cabin wouldn't be part of Crestwood. If that were the definition of Crestwood, I don't think that is the definition of Crestwood. I think it's more amorphous than that, and maybe doesn't have any hard borders at all. I've lived here in what I consider Crestwood for 42 years. This was my hood here. On the other side of the tracks, I lived here. This house here. Moved there in the late summer of 1948. I was a little tight. I looked out my bedroom window, overlooked the railroad tracks. So the steam engine every now and then would go by, and the milk train from Chatham at 5 o'clock in the morning would go by. It was a little different there. The neighborhood wasn't quite as developed. I had next door to me, I had this savanna of tall grass and boulders and a couple of clumps of trees. That parking lot by the apartment building down there wasn't there. It was all grassland. And there was this jungle of brambles and the ruins of some old farmhouses where the parking lot is above the Crestwood station. There were the ruins of some old farmhouses. There was even the basement of one was intact, which was a great secret hideout for us pre-adolescent folks with our cowboy hats and our cap pistols and those things that we were allowed in those days. And then there was this little village within a village here. There was this space. Oops. There was this space. Every time I go disappeared again. There's this little village within a village here that was fairly self-sufficient. I mean, we had a market for meat and produce and dairy. We had a bakery for breads and pastries. We had a hardware store. We had a shoe repair store. We had a barber shop and beauty salon. We had a tailor. We had a laundry. We had a TV repair store. There was a bank. There was a drugstore. There was a florist. There was a liquor store. There was a tavern. There was a bicycle shop. All in this one little village within a village. Okay, there was no clothing store. Wow. You could walk down Columbus Avenue, a couple of blocks, there was Epstein's. Right, across the street was a bowling alley. You could walk down a couple more blocks, there was a movie theater. But that was Tuckahoe. Right? I could also walk up Fisher Avenue, up the hill to the Post Road, and there was a Grand Union. There was a music store. You could buy a Pontiac, I suppose. But that was Eastchester. What was this? I was always interested in how it was developed. At one time, I thought it was always there. One time, I thought the original proprietor of the Crestwood Market was Lenny Lenape. That's an indigenous people's joke. Okay. But it wasn't that old. In 1948, when we moved in, its beginnings were as far back as the first Gulf War is to us today, Operation Desert Storm. So it wasn't that old. So I'd like to look at that development a little bit, and I'll start by going further back, quite a bit further back, to the post-Civil War, when folks in the U.S., new immigrants and folks who had been there for a while, started to develop little communities that were not urban and they were not rural. They were suburban. And so these little groups started to coalesce. Now, Eastchester at this time was already 200 years old, and at one point it extended, included Mount Vernon, and extended down into the Bronx. By 1867, it was a little bit smaller and starting to coalesce into a couple of villages. There was there was, for example, a little enclave here called Lakeville, right, which is around this.
Careful not to tap.
Okay. There was this Lakeville down here, where this little lost the thing again. Lost it again.
There it is.
I like a mouse, not this pad. I like a real mouse. Anyway, there's this little there's this lake down here. This here. Why does it keep disappearing?
Yeah.
There's a little lake down at the bottom there in the center there that was okay. Stay there. There. Okay, there. There was this little lake here that got dug out by hand, and there's a little shallow portion here out of the current of the Bronx River that would freeze during the winter, and they would chop up the ice, and there was an ice house there, and they'd load ice onto the train and send it into the city. At some point, they filled that in to become the Parkway Oval. There was, I'm going to give up with this. There was sort of the heart of Eastchester then was this area called Waverly, which was the hub of transport. There was stage lines, and then eventually trolley lines, horse-drawn trolleys, and then eventually electric trolleys in the early 20th century that ran north and south on the post road. And this was a major exchange point because the east and west, in case you didn't notice, this map is tipped on its side. North is to the left and south is to the right, and Eastchester is the luncheon meet between the cross of the Hutchinson River Parkway and the Hutchinson River and the Bronx River. Anyway, Waverly was this intersection between the north-south trolley lines and the ones coming from downtown Yonkers, down Tuckahoe Road, Main Street. Change point was Waverly, and you could continue up Mill Road to New Rochelle, and from New Rochelle you get to the Boston Post Road, you get to Portchester, you get to New Haven, you could get to Providence, Boston, etc. So Waverly was sort of a center. There was a settlement up here, Union Quarters, now called Chester Heights, off the Hudson River Parkway, Pelhamdale Avenue. There was another settlement where Eastchester High School is now, called Upper Tuckahoe, right in the center of this drawing. That was the north end. But there's nothing down where the Crestwood Station is, the Crestwood Plaza. There's nothing there. Right? There was nothing on the Yonkers side at this time either. Well, nothing. There was farms. It wasn't a settlement of any kind. Move forward a quarter of a century, and we're starting to see things develop. On the left there is a map that I don't like. It's the map of Yonkers Park, but it is a retro map. In other words, the modern map made to look like it was an old map. It's not really an original map. The streets have the modern names in this map, which some of them were different. I think Pennsylvania Avenue back then. It was Central Avenue or something. But what it does show on the right of that is right at where the two maps come together, it shows that there was planned development in the floodplain of the Bronx River. And whether that was going to be commercial or simply residential, don't know for sure. I suspect it was going to be both. There is a little hard to see, but there is a road that goes from, that is now Thompson Avenue. But Thompson Avenue in this map ends when you get to the little square where we have our ceremonies for Memorial Day, whatever, the Memorial Island. And then it becomes what's called Bronx Parkway, and it leads to the Yonkers Park Station. And that goes down to the middle of this area that was mapped out on the floodplain, and which I suspect was going to be a mixed commercial and residential area. On the other side of this map is still Eastchester, this time tipped the other way. North is to the right now, and south is to the left. And there's Columbus Avenue. Well, it's not Columbus Avenue yet. It's still Breckenridge Street, runs from downtown Tuckahoe towards the Crestwood, which is not Crestwood yet, it's Yonkers Park Station, doesn't quite reach that. There's a little area there just before the station that says, no, a little up here that says Yonkers Park Association. So Yonkers Park had a plot of land on the other side of the track, where I lived as a kid. That was at one time Yonkers Park as well, and that's why it looks so Crestwoodian. It has the Tudor type houses, and then some of the larger brick and stone houses, and then as the lots got sold off between those houses, the little lots of houses got inserted. But it's kind of Crestwoodian there. And then there's the station is there, and above the station is above the station there. Above the station is a workstation of the railroad. They had a warehouse and a siding there, I guess, where Reed Avenue is now. And then further to the north, and this is not really part of the Crestwood Station story, further to the north, over here, there's a stream that runs down from Lake Isle, that runs down and it looks like it disappears under the tracks, and it comes out on the other side and joins the Bronx River. I think that was the original Leewardton. I think it was a little culvert. It wasn't really a thoroughfare originally. Some people disagree with that. They from the beginning, when the railroad went through in 1844, that tunnel was there. I'm not so sure of that. Anyway, we've reached the turn of the century, and here's the station. Now I say 1904 here because the postcard I got this picture from was dated 1904, but the handwritten note on the postcard says Yonkers Park Station 1897. I don't know. Was this station built in 1897? The Metro North doesn't know exactly when this was built. That building that looks like our Crestwood Station is not was there today. It's the original building. It has the same basic footprint as today, but you can tell the earlier station from the one that was completely redone in 1928 by the chimney. The chimney here is on the north end of the station, and the chimney today is on the south end of the station. So you can tell the difference. And then this is the Bronx Parkway. You're looking down one lane of the Bronx Parkway. The lane you're looking down is the lane for coming back from the station. The other lane is on the other side of this median, which was a garden kind of median, and the carriages could go down the right-hand side and make a gentle turn around, let people off or pick people up, and then come back towards Yonkers Park on what you're looking down now. Looks like you're pretty far from the station and I don't see a bridge. Well, that's because the river wasn't there. The river was behind the photographer here, much closer to Vermont Terrace. And if we turn around, you're doing about face here and face the other way. Okay, you're now looking at Vermont Terrace. There's the little island there. It's the flagpoles there already. There's a house there on Vermont Terrace. There's another house to the right. Oh, there's the bridge. These people are standing on the bridge over the river. You can see where Bronx Parkway divides. The part coming towards you is going towards the station, and then the part going on the far right there going away is headed from the station. And then there's this house. This one? No, the one on the right. This house here is a Fox House, it was called, and I was interested in that. I found this article, strange article, about how a Tuckahoe cop found that there had been a fire. It had been boarded up, and the Tuckahoe cop walking by saw that the boarded up window had been opened, and he found two guys inside robbing the plumbing. And he arrested them. And if that's not bad enough, it's a little hard to read, but if you read it down towards the bottom paragraphs, this article adds a fact that this guy that they arrested stealing hardware, stealing plumbing, had been arrested 10 years before, which had been in the middle of the 1890s, for shooting an Italian, killing an Italian. Who he claimed was wearing a coonskin cap and hiding behind a stone wall, and mistook him for a woodchuck. and it never came to trial. So, no, this is in-depth reporting. I just love these little articles, and I found another one in the same issue of the paper. Right next to it, not about the station so much as this couple from Bronxville who were suing each other for divorce. She, because he turned all the pictures of her mother to the wall. and he, because he admitted that he was snoring and wouldn't have minded a nudge, but she insisted on blowing a tin whistle. And I said, I just love these stories, and I really think things haven't changed that much if you listen to Eyewitness News. It's pretty much the same. Okay. So anyway, we'll back up a little bit. We're still facing west, but now from the Tuckahoe side of this dirt area there in front of the station on the Tuckahoe side. There is the original house. Notice that the chimney is on the right. There's a tarp that says Crestwood over the sign. Now, I'm not sure. This is right around the time that changed from Yonkers Park to Crestwood. And I'm not sure whether this tarp is to cover the Yonkers Park sign, So that people say, yeah, this is a Crestwood station. Or they have a new Crestwood sign that's going to be unveiled at a ceremony any day. Anyway, there's this tarp there. And there is this white building to the left. This is called the Wells Building. And it was mixed resident and commercial. It was commercial on the ground floor. It was a 3-story building and residences on the top. Shortly after this picture was taken, I'm not saying that day, but at some point after this picture taken, there was a fire that destroyed the roof. There was a fire in the upper residence that destroyed the roof. And when they put out the fire, and when they repaired the house, they got rid of the 3rd floor. And so here it is now, only a 2-story building. It's the same building that you just saw. And this is sitting on that Bronx Parkway. We're looking south on the Bronx Parkway, so this would be on your right as you're walking towards the station from here. And it has a residence on the top. It has a market and a tailor shop on the bottom. And there are some other buildings there to the left, some other outbuildings to the left. If you climbed up those stairs in front and turned around and faced north, you would see this building, all right, on the north side of Bronx Parkway. This was a real estate office, maybe residence on top, maybe it was original real estate for Yonkers Park, I don't know. But there's a for sale sign in the window, and I don't think they're going to get much of a sale because the Bronx River Parkway is about to go right through this house. And both these houses disappear. And with it, really any chance of commercial development on the Yonkers side of the station. So what about the east side, the Tuckahoe side? This is sort of it's not really a map, it's sort of a cartoon of Tuckahoe. It's like a placemat in a diner in Old Orchard Beach, Maine. You know, that you can see where the diner is, and if you want to walk down to the Pitchfork Museum, you know, you can do that. But it shows some neat stuff. So down at the Tuckahoe end, you can see that by this time they have created that Main Street now goes over the tracks. Main Street, like most crossings on the railroad, were grade level crossings, and there were gates, and there was a guy that stood there that would flag down trolley cars and carriages as the train was coming. But when they electrified the railroad between 1905 and 1915, all the way from Grand Central Station to White Plains, they eliminated all grade crossings. Right? They dropped the tracks down Park Avenue in Manhattan so that the streets could go over without crossing on the tracks, and all the way up through the Bronx and through Westchester. And in Tuckahoe, what they did is they lowered the tracks and raised the entire depot square. It was raised about 8 to 10 feet. And the tracks would drop another 8 to 10 feet. So this is after that. So it's probably close to it's probably 1920, maybe a little bit later. The village hall has been built, which is now the Polk Building. But the village hall has been built. But Columbus Avenue, and it's now Columbus Avenue, got 1916. Breckenridge became Columbus's Italian Renaissance in 1916. You know who Breckenridge was, by the way? He was the vice president of James Buchanan. And he was pretty much a non-entity. He left the Union with the Confederacy, became the Secretary of War for the Confederacy at the end of the war. So he was canceled in 1916, and ironically replaced by Columbus. Anyway, so Columbus Avenue ends ends at the Duesenberry building here, which is, it doesn't go through the Sagamore like it does now. There's a building in the
Which
way.
one is it? This one?
Duesenberry building is
That?
no, it's this big building here.
This one?
No, up in here, up here. Yeah, up here, right in the square, in the depot square. Columbus Avenue would bunk into you couldn't go straight through to Sagamore, but anyway. That's Tuckahoe. What about up at the Crestwood end? Nothing much. Okay, still a couple of houses here on Dante where I grew up. The house I grew up, I don't think is there yet. Here, this is a real estate map of the time. There's a couple of houses on Dante, and there's a couple of houses along Fisher. There's what I call the Crooked House. I call it almost there, right above, go up there. I call it the Crooked House because it's not aligned with the street. I don't know if you've ever walked up Fisher Avenue. There's this house that's sort of at an angle, crazy angle. It's not perpendicular. It's not aligned with the street. It's a line. If you can see this, it's a line to the property line on the north side, but not on the south side. And it was probably built there before there was a Fisher Avenue. There was no street. All right. But by this time, there is a Fisher Avenue, and there are a couple of houses, but there's nothing commercial except for one building around 1920. This building's still there. All right. This time it was a drugstore for a long time. Now it's Billa Arena something. But it was a drugstore. It was Russell Drugs. Around 1920, Russell had two drugstores, one at the depot, Tuckahoe Depot, one in Crestwood. They each had a telephone number here. I don't know whether you can read it, but it's a 4-digit telephone number. I found an earlier ad where the two telephone numbers were Tuckahoe 13 and Tuckahoe 18. Right? That was I mean, Alexander Graham Bell, but the telephone 1880, whatever. And that's pretty impressive. But what I've always thought must have been as impressive was the guy that sold the first telephone. I mean, he sold, tried to, hey, you can use this to talk to well, maybe I'll sell another one. That guy was good. That guy was good. Whatever that guy. Okay, but this is the only commercial building in the Crestwood Plaza area. All right, all this changes in 1927 when a group of businessmen from Crestwood decide that they want to have the zoning change from residential to commercial in this area. It was called Plaza something. It was called Depot Plaza then, but they wanted the area changed for commercial purposes. And they petitioned the trustees of the Village of Tuckahoe to change the zoning, which they did. And then it began. Plan A. Plan A was a bridge over the tracks. Now, I think this drawing, again, this is another cartoon. This drawing is it's a pedestrian bridge, I think. I don't think that's the point. It doesn't look like it's big enough. Look at the width of Columbus Avenue compared to the width of this thing. And it has these two grand staircases that come down to the platform on either end. I think that's to go from one side to the other. What's strange is if this is 1927, where the heck is the tunnel? The tunnel was built in 1910. The tunnel was built when they electrified the railroad to go under the tracks, right? In Main Street, they went over the tracks. Main Street was raised to go over the tracks. in Bronxville, they debated for years whether to go under or over. Frontier Road eventually goes under the tracks. There was a debate in Eastchester at Harney Road whether that how that would work, and they built that big berm, that hill behind the outfield of the Little League field. They go up this hill, they go over. That had been a ground level crossing as well. So I don't know where the tunnel is in this. It's not obvious. It's not there, and they have this bridge. There is an engineer's picture of that same bridge. And again, I see these staircases that come down. I can't believe that it was intended for cars to stop on that bridge and let people out, or carriages and let people out. I think that was a pedestrian bridge. Similar, but this is at the Crestwood station. And this is about the time that the building got the Crestwood Station building was revamped. But these two buildings here on the right, they did get built. Right? There's the upper one there, the L-shaped building, which I really wanted to find out more about because it has this arabesque, this Moorish look to it, both in the roof line and in the decoration around the entrances. It has that tile, that Moorish kind of mosaic tile around the entrances of the building. But I couldn't find out who built that. It was a tailor shop originally, and it's still sort of a tailor cleaner, dry cleaner store. But that indeed was built, as was the building below that in this picture. That was built, and there it is, the Crestwood National Bank, all right, in Tuckahoe. That's what it's called, Crestwood National Bank in Tuckahoe. And it's in the building that now houses that's where Martine's is now. That was a bakery, and now it's Martine's. All right, and then there is a market below that, and then another market, Graciti's below that, and then some other thing there. Notice the brick building bank is not there. The apartment house behind it is not there, and there's no building east of that on the left-hand side, which is where the Crestwood Market would be eventually. That's not there. It's just that building. There's a little ad for the bank. I can hardly read it. Not too big, not too small, or whatever that says.
Big enough to help you, small enough to know you, safe enough to protect you.
Yeah. Okay. That's pretty cool. And not only that, they had their own money. This is a banknote from the Crestwood National. It's a banknote from the National Bank of Crestwood in Tuckahoe. And here's an ad from Graciti's. 11 cents for oatmeal. I don't know how many pounds of oatmeal, and 65 cents for caviar. All right. Okay. So this is 1929. 1929. We're starting to commercialize the east side of the parkway. Here's Plan B. This would have been a big if this was done. This is a tunnel, a proposal for a tunnel that goes under the tracks. All right. You see the little crooked house there? Starts at the little crooked house and goes under the tracks, under what is the liquor store. Under the tracks, right under where the liquor store is, comes out on the other side. And this is for vehicular traffic. Right, this is 1934. The bank building is there. The bakery building is there. The Crestwood Market building is there. The Arabesque building is there. There is a second building next to that original building along the tracks. There's that second building where the restaurants are, where the bagel shop is now. That's there, and they wanted to build a tunnel.
And there's a lot of debate about this thing. Okay, there is hearing on the Crestwood Tunnel. Board rescinds petition for the crossover. And then the Crestwood body to push for the crossover. And then the board to petition for the crossover. And then the commission sets for the date for the span hearing, blah, blah, blah. All, in the 1927 era. And finally, no, the Yonkers part of Crestwood. Notice that? The Yonkers part of Crestwood. That sort of assumes that there's another part of Crestwood. Right? The Yonkers part of Crestwood says, nope, we don't want this thing. And part of the reason was that there was a proposal along with this to build what I call a strip mall. I didn't call it that then. Along Scarsdale Road, south of St. Clement, St. Eleanor's, south of St. Clement, to build a little commercial park there to make Scarsdale Road commercial. And so there was this whole thing about going from the Post Road in Eastchester all the way down Fisher Avenue, under the tracks, up Scarsdale, up Thompson to Scarsdale, or Pennsylvania to Scarsdale, and up Chrisfield all the way to Central Avenue, and have that a commercial thoroughfare. And people, particularly Crestwoodians, didn't want that to happen. Eastchesterites too. They nixed having commercial zoning commercial above the parking lot at the Crestwood station until you got to Route 22. They wouldn't allow that to be commercialized either. So we moved to 1940, or about 1940. I don't know exactly when this picture was taken. People tell me that those cars are late 30s cars, but this could have been 1940. It's a parade of some kind, and these gentlemen are in a baseball uniform. It says Tuckahoe and then something underneath that I can't read. It ends in ERS and has the little strip that goes underneath, like the Dodgers jersey. I'm thinking it might be Clippers. They were the Tuckahoe Clippers, was a semi-pro baseball team in the early 1900s, the O's and the teens. I didn't know whether it was still around by the 40s. It's not Tuckahoe Robins, who I remember from the 50s as being a semi-pro team in Tuckahoe, played at the Parkway Oval. Semi-pro meaning they had one or two ringers that they paid to play, and then everybody else was sort of local volunteers. But here is now you can see the bank is there at the right-hand side. What was the bank is now a hardware store. Sovereign Market's still there. There's another market, and then there's just before the bank. There's something that says something like Mary's Lingerie. It was there right behind the bank. Right behind the bank. So keep that in mind. And we're going to pan a little bit above this. We're unfortunately going to miss where the Crestwood Market was. And I'm pretty sure the Crestwood Market was there by now, but there's a shoe store on the right that's still there. Now that shoe store has been there since this building was built in the 30s. And it's still a shoe repair. And then this other building was the hardware store. This is where the hardware store moved when I was a kid. But right now it is Carmilo's Lingerie. All right, this is the Crestwood Station is like the underwear capital of the Hudson Valley. This is rather amazing. Okay, so we'll move forward. Now it's in the mid 50s, and this is when I was a kid. I was running around as a fourth grader, fifth grader, and this is what I remember being sent to the store around the corner from where I lived. This is now the bank is no longer the National Bank of Crestwood. It's the Crestwood branch of NBW. And then there's this store within the bank building that I don't remember what it was, and I can't read it on this. Then there's a real estate guy, and then there is the TV and radio repair. And I gotta tell a little bit about this. This was two brothers who had this TV and radio repair. One of them was blind. I was a diabetic. Blind. Blind TV repair. I think about that. He was. I worked there one year, probably around 58, 59, somewhere like that. I worked there one spring, a couple of days a week, and I would stock the shelves with the tubes, you know, the J404 dash whatever. And this guy, the blind brother would stay in the shop, and he would feel to see if the tube was hot or whatever, and he'd replace it, and he knew which one it was, and he'd ask me, and I'd get it, and he'd put it in. And the other brother made households to fix your TV. Okay, TVs were huge, right? You weren't going to bring them in. He had a foot locker filled with tubes and stuff. Not the picture tube. That you had that. Then he had to. You had to do something else. But most of those tubes in the back, like vacuum tube, he would make calls and he would fix your TV. I went away that summer, and while I was away, the blind guy died, and they moved the store to Marvildale Road down by the Shiloh Baptist Church, and I've always been a little sad that I never went back to work there again. Anyway, next to that is the laundry. I think that's the laundry there, although I don't recognize the sign of Lee's Laundry, Lee's Chinese Laundry, but I think that was the laundry. And then, of course, the Crestwood Bakery and the Crestwood Market. And there was a stationery store, a little luncheonette, which was actually a bookie joint. Pete's, we called it. I don't know whether it had a real name, but it was called Pete's. And Pete was a really nice guy. He let us go in and read the comics and put them back. Because that was not his source of income. He had a counter, and you could get an egg cream for a dime and an ice cream soda for 15 cents and a malted milk for a quarter. He had a stove and stuff. I mean, I don't think he ever cooked there. But we would get our comic books there. We'd get our bubblegum cards, our baseball cards there. So we'd stop by there almost every afternoon. And he was a nice guy. And then after that is the sugar bear guy, there. And then the hardware store, Mr. Prescott owned the hardware store. And that was a wonderful place. I mean, he was an older gentleman then. And the place just smelled great. It smelled of wooden stuff. And he had all these wooden drawers, these little elegant wooden drawers, the whole wall of them, and different size screws and nuts and stuff in each one. I'd be sent down by my dad to get a washer. Across the street from here, I'm sorry I don't have a picture on it. And I tried to contact the family. The barbershop was across the street. Now it's where where the hardware store is. But the barbershop was across the street. It was run by a German family, the Krugers. With Ronnie Kruger and Richard Kruger were a couple of years older than me, and I knew them. And their dad ran the barbershop, and the beauty parlor was next door with their mom. And they had a barber with one of the hands there. One of the barber, his name was Helmet. We thought that was funny. that there was a barber named Helmet. And of course he was German, so to us fifth graders he was Hair Helmet. which we thought was a scream. Well, we were really funny characters. This is the inside of the Crestwood Market in the 50s. Now, I wish I had a picture of the people. that manned the Crestwood Market at the time. Mike Mustachio was the owner, and his bailiwick was the counter in the back there. To the right, off to the right would have been his butcher block table, and I would sit on a stool behind there and watch him take out a side of beef and whack it up into sirloins and whatever, and just watching him use those axes, knives, and whatever was wonderful. There was a secret passage out there to the right into the bakery, into the kitchen of the bakery. I wasn't sneaking. I went in, and they knew me, and I got a cookie. It was like a hockey puck, vanilla hockey puck with a spiral chocolate in it. I can still picture it. Off to the left a little bit is a glass cage where the bookkeeper sat, and the bookkeeper, and you could charge at Mike's at the Crestwood Market. You had a charge account, and my mother would send me down for local credit, whatever, charge it. This is before, no credit cards or anything. We charge it, and at the end of the month, you got a bill and paid. I found some newspaper articles where Mike was trying to get money from people who were charged and not paid up, and he was trying to get them arrested. And then over on the left end was the grocery part, and that was run by a guy named Sal. And Sal was an older gentleman then, tall, skinny guy, and he could handle this pole with a little grabby thing on the top. He go up and he grabbed a can of corn and flip it down and catch it as it went. And I remember one time we lost a small bean down the sewer. And I went to Sal's, like I grabby pole. He goes, I'll come with you. So he leaves the store, walks with me all the way around the corner, up onto Dandy Avenue, and fishes out my small bean out of the sewer. and goes back, and goes back. And then there was the fourth guy not shown in this picture, which was there, was a young teenage stock clerk named Ernie Zocchi. I don't know what you remember Ernie Zocchi. He was a wonderful man, died several years, not too long ago. I forget, 10 years, maybe less.
8 or 10.
Wonderful man, and he eventually bought this market. But he was a stock boy there when I was a teenage stuff. It's more the Crestwood Market because I love it so much. And there's the bakery next to it. There's Lee's Laundry, Lee's Chinese Laundry. You're not supposed to say that anymore, I found out. No, you can say Chinese restaurant because that refers to the food. But if you say Chinese laundry, you're sort of referring to people who work there. And you're not supposed to say that. But Lee called it Lee's Chinese Laundry. So that's what it was. And now it changes hands. This is the new Crestwood Market. It says right there, new Crestwood Market. This is when Ernie bought the place. He cleaned it up a lot, but Mike had just stuff pile of loads. And if you notice this little sign, save the Crestwood Library.
Oh wow!
Saving the Crestwood Library sign in when it was about 1970. And then downstream from the bakery, it's now an Italian bakery. It wasn't always an Italian bakery. I forget who I'll think of his name. But on the bakery, it changed hands a couple of times. But here's the Italian bakery, and then there's the Dino's, is the pharmacy below that. We move on. The Dino's morphs into Century Drugs. The market changes hands again. The bakery changes hands again. Villarina's is now located over here next to the bank. All right. Still shoe store. Still shoe repair guy is there. And today we now have the was it Stevens Green Stevens Green and the barber shop and Century Drug and Martine's. And guess what? It's still a shoe store. Shoe store is still there, and this is the guy. This is the guy. This is the guy, Frank. He is a wonderful guy, and I talked to him at some length. He took over this store in 1995, so he's been there almost. He's been there 30 years, almost 30 years. And I said, when I was a kid, the Sanfilippo's owned this store. Joe Sanfilippo was in my class, and his dad owned the place. He goes, "Oh, Sanfilippo, yeah." He said, "I bought this from the guy who bought it from Sanfilippo." So it's a shoe store for a long time, and I don't know how this guy makes a living. He charges nothing. I mean, he's just a wonderful guy. Now I'm going to go to the Columbus Avenue part, but before I do that, I'll say a word about the Genesis Hebrew Center, which is really part of that Crestwood Plaza. Genesis Hebrew Center started by a meeting in a home of Maurice Handler in Crestwood family. Started Genesis Hebrew Center in 1936. And they gathered a community of Jewish folks, and they met for a while. They met at Asbury. They had a Hebrew school and they rented some office space over the bank. Had a Hebrew school. In 1940, they bought this property, and in 1945, they broke ground to build the Hebrew Center here. It was the first synagogue built in the U.S. after World War II, and they started it on VE Day, May of 1945. Okay, they've since moved on. They merged with somebody in Scarsdale. They bought some property. I think they bought a Christian Science reading in Scarsdale, and that's where that congregation is now. This is the inside here. One more little story about this. When my mother and some parents formed a co-op, what they call nursery school, those days, pre-K. And I went to pre-K, four, I guess, in the basement of the Genesis Hebrew Center. All right, I'll tell one more story about Genesis Hebrew Center. And I had a lot of good friends who were Jewish. I attended a number of bar mitzvahs here, at least one funeral. And I was in the 8th grade, and my friend Ronnie Feinstein was studying, I guess, for his bar mitzvah, and he was taking Hebrew lessons. And during the release time, the Wednesday afternoon, public school kids sat in a study hall, useless study hall, while Catholic kids went to CCD and other kids went to other places, and there was the Hebrew school here for Ronnie Feinstein. So he invited me to go, and so I go down to the principal. I said, "I'd like to go to Hebrew school," and the guy said, "No." I said, "Why not?" He said, "You're not Jewish." I said, "Oh." Well, I got a note from the rabbi, and we brought that back to the principal, and he let me go. So for about 8 weeks, I think in 1958, 59, for about 8 weeks in the spring, I went to Hebrew school. I don't think I learned much. I could say a long time. I could say that Hebrew alphabet. I can't anymore. And I told this recently to some Jewish friend, and he said, "You went voluntarily?" They dragged me kicking and screaming. Anyway, on the Columbus Avenue part of the Crestwood Plaza. This is somewhere. I wish I could get rid of that setup, professional audio, blah 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 thing on top. This is around 1950, I'm going to say, and this is when the the northern gas station was Tidal with Vitol products. It later became a Flying A station, and then eventually Crestwood Getty. The second one there was Texaco, Fire Chief, Sky Chief, and then later it became a Gulf. And then here is the Plaza Inn. It's only one store with Y. There are two other the real estate and some other thing in that second building, the building that's north of the Arabesque one. That's the Plaza Inn. I love this picture for a couple of reasons. One is you can see the Crestwood Market and the hardware store and shoe store still there, and this house up in the middle up on the top. My best friend lived there. Mitchell lived there, and we could come down that driveway and to the woods that were behind the stores. Here, the parking lot's already there then now, but there's that, and then there's this line of stores here on Columbus Avenue. There is the bike shop. There's an art store, and there's a Republican Club, which was I guess it was populated mostly by Republicans, but they would lease it out. I don't know, lease it out or let other civic groups would meet there. There was Westchester Park Association. There was some other groups would meet there. There was something called the Fusion Party that was sort of Democrats and Republicans. They met there in a Republican Club. I had my the Eagle Board when I interviewed for my Eagle Scout that was there at the Republican Club. The Plaza Inn is now the Plaza Lounge, and it takes up the entire building there. There's a restaurant side and a bar side. It's no longer just a tavern. And the story that goes with that is these are the two mayors of Tuckahoe, Sonny Dalton and Milton Gibbons. Dalton was mayor in the 40s. He was defeated by Gibbons in 1949. Gibbons ran as a Dalton was a Republican. Gibbons was a Democrat, but he always ran as Democrat plus something else. Democrat and Fusion Democrat and Good Neighbor Party, Good Democrat and something else. And he was reelected several times. My dad knew him fairly well. In fact, he appointed my dad as a police commissioner in Tuckahoe. Now, this is not Blue Bloods, right? This is Tuckahoe. And there were three commissioners. One appointed each year for a 3-year term, so they staggered. I think my dad was 2 terms as a police commissioner. And their big event was to choose each year whether the new cruiser would be a Ford, Chevy, or Plymouth. And my dad was Commissioner Ford. The other story, one other story about being a police commissioner. The police commissioners of Tuckahoe engineered a trade with the Eastchester Police Department. They sent an Irish cop to Eastchester for an Italian cop and a motorcycle. That was quite a deal. Anyway, these two guys would hold court in the Plaza Lounge on Fridays. It was really Dalton's family work, but Gibbons would show up there. And one of the things they would do is argue, what is the name of this place? Sonny Dalton said it is Crestwood Plaza, period. This is Crestwood. Milton Gibbons wanted, Upper Tuckahoe had already been used once, but he was sort of partial to that, or North Depot, or some other thing other than Crest. And Dalton and Dalton would go to him into bringing the subject up again, and they would argue on Friday afternoons at the Plaza Lounge. And the two gas stations in their later years. This is it's now a Gulf, and it's Rick's Service. I tried to find out who Rick was. I couldn't find out who Rick was. But the Getty station is Milt Lockwood, and what a wonderful guy. He died on Christmas Day, 2019. But he owned this for a long time, and he could tell wonderful stories. He told war stories, a Vietnam veteran, told war stories. He was a great baseball fan, talked baseball. He was just and a great mechanic. I mean, he was just a good guy. And this is the more modern times here. We now have a Chinese restaurant, you could say that, a pizza parlor. We have Frank's appliance store. That's been there for a long time. I tried to get in touch with Frank for this to see if he knew something, see if he knew who Rick was, or Rick's service. And then there is what was the Plaza Inn, and then the Plaza Lounge, and then Crabtree's, and then American Bistro, and now it's Rio Bravo. And then of course there were those apartment buildings where the gas stations were. Now there's been residents at the Crestwood station for a long time. There were residents above that original building and across the street. So that's not that strange. Okay, here's the other side, the east side, winding down at the east side. And remember this building's still there, except they added to it. You can the last part where the liquor store is, the last part in the upper drawing wasn't there in the lower drawing, right? So it got extended, and then another building got built north of it. So what was the market there in 1920 is not where the liquor store was, before the liquor store. Anyway, that building is still there. It still looks pretty much the same, except it got added to the north end. They added to the north end. This is during the blizzard of 47. This is Christmas of 1947. This is just before we moved into. I moved into Dante Avenue, and you know, my relatives from Brooklyn. We moved from Brooklyn, and our relatives would come up from Brooklyn, and they insisted we lived in Crestwood. You know, we said no, we live in Tuckahoe. They said no, we don't get off at the Tuckahoe station. We get off at Crestwood station. And if my mother's birthday or something, they bought some flowers at the Crestwood Forest, and they got a bottle of wine at Crestwood Liquors, and they went across the street and they got some cold cuts at the Crestwood Market, and they got some pastry at the Crestwood Bakery, and then they walked around the corner to our house about 600 feet away. You're impressed. Okay. The end store, of course, was Russell Pharmacy back from the beginning, and then it was a Rexall for a while, then it was a Whalen's for a while, then it was just a generic Crestwood Drugs for a while, and now it's Hillary. At some point, the drugstore expanded and took over what had been the florist next to the liquor store. Liquor store changes its sign there, but it's still a liquor store. And here is the luncheonette and the delicatessen that have been there since this building was built. And then there's a real estate agency, and there is the florist has moved to the end here, but then the florist becomes Cleese's restaurant, which becomes Roberto's restaurant, which is now a bagel something, or bagel loft or something like that. Ernie Zaki, all right, leaves the Crestwood Market and buys the deli and the luncheonette and deli. In fact, he bought the whole building. Ernie owned this whole building, and he lived up on one of the apartments on the upper floor. So this people still refer to that, even though it's not. Still refer to that that luncheonette as Zaki Brothers. So here it is today. Ballerinas, etc. There's still a luncheonette there. but it's been modernized a bit. Liquor store is gone. But I want to go back, this is to finish up here, I just want to go back to 1946. This is that luncheonette that became Zaki's at some point, but it's before it was Zaki. It was owned by the Kavazis. There was Artie Kavazi was a couple of years behind me at Eastchester. This is his dad, I guess before he's born, and his grandmother that ran this luncheonette, that owned and ran this luncheonette in the late 40s into the early 50s. But the important thing about this is the customer. I'll give you a hint who that customer is that's sitting at the counter. Norman Rockwell. Norman Rockwell is sitting at the counter at the Crestwood station. In the iconic cover of the Saturday Evening Post. That Norman Rockwell, there's another Norman Rockwell. So I love that picture for that reason. I knew the Kavazis and to have a picture with Norman Rockwell sitting there, it's just wonderful. So, it is the village of Tuckahoe. Sonny Dalton wins. It's Crestwood Plaza. It's Crestwood Plaza at the Crestwood Station, which they tried to name Eastchester Station at some point, but they didn't. And so, is it Crestwood? If Crestwood is an idea, then I think that the Crestwood Plaza is part of Crestwood. That's me.